From 12 News, this is Newsmakers.
A December stunner from Rome, the Vatican giving Catholic priests the green light to bless same-sex couples, though not their marriages. This at the time of international and domestic turmoil, when many may be seeking the spiritual comfort of Christmas time. And for the first time in nearly 2 decades, Catholics in Rhode Island are celebrating the season under new leadership. Our guest this week on Newsmakers, the new bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Providence, Richard Henning. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Ted Nisi is off this week, and we welcome to Newsmakers for the first time Bishop Richard Henning from the Roman Catholic Diocese of Providence. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
As I said at the top of the show there, we have a lot to talk about, including the announcement from Pope Francis on blessing same-sex couples and what that means. But before we get there, many Rhode Islanders, including in your own flock, simply don't know you. You replaced Bishop Thomas Tobin last year. What should people know about you and your vision for the diocese?
Well, I've been kind of crisscrossing the diocese, trying to get to know the diocese, and hopefully that helps people get to know me a little bit. I don't know that I'm anything particularly special. I'm the oldest of 5 children. My father was a city firefighter. My mother was a baby nurse and a homemaker. I had a pretty happy childhood, a faith-filled one.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a place called Valley Stream, right on the Queens border on Long Island. So it really was Long Island all my life. I felt the call to priesthood really beginning in 5th grade. So it was kind of a part of my life. I didn't kind of act on it until in college. But I had very happy years as a parish priest. I did some further studies, worked in the seminary. I really found that very life-giving as well. So these things have just kind of happened to me as I've gone along. Became an auxiliary bishop there at Pope Francis's appointment. So I don't know. I guess I'm not all that comfortable talking about me.
Well, so the second part of that question was your vision for the diocese, which I acknowledge is a big question, right? And we're going to get into in this interview where things stand, the state of the church, all of that. But you know, fundamentally, 30,000 feet. What is your view? So
the basic plan is it comes really from the gospel and the tradition of the church first and foremost. That you know, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. I believe that Jesus Christ is the revelation of the heart of God. I believe that in Jesus we find the grace and the mercy of God, the possibility of new life. That's where it all begins. For me, that truth, that Jesus is Lord, the truth of his gospel, and the truth of his Eucharist, again, these are the foundations, the building blocks for my own faith, for the way in which I was raised in the faith. So in a very real sense, it's not sort of my plan. It's rather what I receive, you know, through the tradition of the church, that commitment to the Lord, to the scriptures, to the Eucharist. So that's really where, for me, it begins. And that's why as I go around Rhode Island, I mostly do that in a church setting, in a prayerful setting. I think it is very important in terms of vision to do a lot of listening. So this whole year for me has been less about telling people my solution for them and more about hearing from them what their experience is. So I'd like to say I didn't come with a plan, because I think that would be dishonest and probably not useful. I think it's important first to understand people and understand this local church, its many gifts and challenges. Obviously there are challenges, and I'm certainly already well aware of those, but I've also experienced the gifts. I see the enduring faith of so many people. I see the close-knit communities here in Rhode Island. I see that kind of ferocious devotion to place, to the local community. I see extraordinary hospitality as I go from place to place. So that's kind of shaping what I hope will be something more of a vision. I know, I'm not trying to be dishonest. I know as a leader I've got to be able to say, here's where I think we need to go, but I think it's worth taking the time first to learn and to listen. Yeah, and I think that's part of what Pope Francis wants.
Absolutely. You're just coming out of the gate, and you got to get the lay of the land as you step foot into this new position. And I do want to hear what you view as the challenges for the diocese in a bit. But as I said at the top of the show, Pope Francis announced priests can bless same-sex couples. This does not mean they can preside over same-sex marriages. Effectively, what does it mean? What does the document actually say?
Mm-hmm. So I read the document, and unfortunately, as you can imagine, in the world that you live, media will often explain things to us, but sometimes all of people's issues get involved in that, and especially with social media, it can distort. I think there is some distorting going on in this case.
Well, you can provide clarity right now.
That's what I'd like to do. So my understanding first of what I think Pope Francis wants through this is he's a man who never wants to begin with no or judgment or condemnation. In his writings on Fratelli Tutti, that we are all brothers and sisters in the Lord, he has a desire to get past what has become this kind of rigid ideological divide among so many cultures and peoples, where people cannot engage with one another because they disagree. So he's kind of pushing back, I think, at that reality of our culture, that strong division. And he wants to be able to say, even if I don't agree, I still engage with you because you are my brother, you are my sister, we are children of God. So I think that's the kind of the ground on which this particular approach is taken. It's a pastoral outreach. So it doesn't fundamentally change church teaching. For Catholics, marriage is a gift, a sacrament between a man and a woman, one man and one woman, with openness to natural generativity in children. That's the key theological element there, which we have received. We didn't create that, we received that from the Lord. So that remains the same. The Holy Father is not altering that. What he's saying to clergy is, I want you to accompany people where they are. I want you to be able to bring to them the blessings of faith in the Lord, right? So this is encouraging clergy when dealing pastorally with people that may find themselves in disagreement with the church's teaching or not able to live that teaching at this time, to be able to help them by praying with them, by blessing them. It's really asking them, again, to engage as we we take the risk of engaging, right, across those divides. So that's, I think, really what this is about.
So practically speaking, someone will walk in and say, Father, we're buying a new house. Will you bless our new home? And this is a same-sex couple. This is giving them, giving the priest the ability to do that.
Well, blessing of homes is sort of a separate...
I'm trying to figure out, you understand what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure out practically what this means.
Right. The issue is a same-sex attracted person, perhaps someone who is in a relationship or even in a marriage, comes in and is feeling sort of the divide in their own heart between what the church teaches and what they're experiencing, and they're not able at this time to live what the church would summon them to live. That means I can be pastoral, I can pray with them, I can pray for God's blessing upon them in their journey of their lives.
And you didn't feel you could do that before?
No, I think, in fact, I could. That's where I don't think this document is as radical as some present it. I don't think it's as... So the Holy Father's typical stance, if you notice, he hasn't made changes in church doctrine. He changes kind of the way he engages and the way he summons particularly the leadership of the church and the clergy to be more willing to accompany people in the challenges of everyday living and all the complexities of that. So it's not, unfortunately, it's not as much news as maybe it has gotten attention around the world. And it has caused already some disagreement. You can certainly see that in the church.
There are Catholic prelates who who have been uneasy with this order. So if you're saying it's not the sort of bombshell that maybe has been portrayed, but yet prelates are uneasy with it, then
no, you're
how do you
absolutely
square
right.
that?
Yeah, I think they are fearful that. I think they're more fearful about how people will interpret it than what it actually says. Mm-hmm. If you read the document, again, it doesn't say anything truly radical. It does not change the nature of marriage. It does not allow for some kind of side blessing of a same-sex marriage. But I think there's the fear that some will take this and run with it. There's a certain unease, in part because of the actions of the German bishops, who have pushed this envelope much further and much more into the question of the sacrament or closer to the sacrament. So I think that's where the division or the controversy is coming in. I think it's also important to say that this is hard. These are hard things. People are genuinely suffering. I believe passionately in what the church teaches about marriage, but I know that there are those who feel the pain of that, and I want them to know that they are my brothers and sisters, that they are, they are children of God, that I love them, that I'm not here to judge them. I'm here to help them the best that I can to come closer to the heart of Christ, and I pray to live in the way that I believe the gospel instructs us to live. If they can't do that, it doesn't mean I stop loving them or think that they're now evil or beyond the pale.
So you seem okay, at ease with what came from the Vatican.
Yeah, I honestly, I read the reports first. I shouldn't have. And then I read the document. And when I read the document, I thought, well, wait a minute. I'm not sure this is saying everything that people are saying about it. And I'm not blaming your trade, by the way. I think, I think
you know what? I mean, this is an entirely
Right.
different show, but it depends where you get your information from.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
There's a lot of sources out there that aren't good ones. I want to shift gears. State of the Church. For a long time now, most of the headlines about the diocese have been about retrenchment, closing parishes or merging them, closing schools, dealing with fewer priests, and so on and so forth. But Bishop Tobin, we had him on every year for a decade, did always say he was confident about the fundamental financial footing of the church here. How would you describe the state of the diocese today in terms of its financial health and the outlook for closures in 2024?
So, as I'm learning, we have some significant challenges, and certainly I respect and appreciate the good work that Bishop Tobin accomplished during his tenure here in the Diocese of Providence. He was very judicious and careful in addressing some of these issues and merging some parishes, closing some parishes. Part of the unique history of Rhode Island is that, and I'm not sure this was a good thing, we Catholics divided by tribe. So where in many parts of the United States there would have been one parish church, we built 5 because each group wanted their own. And that had to do with, I think, prejudice
ethnicity and
prejudice among groups.
Sure.
So now we have the problem of we have all this infrastructure built for what should be one community, and there's 5. How do you maintain?
And the
all
flock
that?
is shrinking.
And then throw in the secularization of the culture and the drift away, and the fact that so many of these parishes were so closely tied to ethnic identity, but as the ethnic identity fades, so does the practice. So it's sort of a perfect storm of cultural and social change. So we have to grapple with that, and some of that is going to mean painful decisions about what we can sustain and maintain. The reason Bishop Tobin was confident is the same reason I'm confident. I understand it looks like this is a very dramatic change, but the Catholic Church is old, and it's been through cycles of destruction and rebuilding, of scandal and renewal. This is actually not a new thing for us. I often like to joke that the clergy of the church, we're proof positive for the Holy Spirit. We could not possibly have done this for 2,000 years on our own. God is at work here. And then we often get in the way, but God is at work. So my goals here are not first and foremost about finances or even buildings. My goals are, as a disciple of Jesus Christ, about drawing as many people as I can to know the heart of Christ and the grace and the mercy that flow from that loving heart of the Lord. That's the heart of it.
And of course you understand, along with that, people feel a real attachment to their parish.
Absolutely.
So when you say the phrase painful decisions, and people watching at home hear you say that, can you tell us if you expect to merge or close churches in 24?
Yes.
And can you shed more light on where?
I'm not able to say that because that's still a question that I haven't found an answer to.
Okay.
So, and some of it has to do with the number of priests we have. That's clear.
That was my next question.
Some of it has to do with some of our parishes are themselves, they are sunsetting themselves. They don't have children there. They don't have baptisms, right? So some of it is we have to be honest with ourselves about where there is vibrant life and where there's not. Now, part of the challenge in Rhode Island in particular is that some of our communities, especially our mill towns, they have suffered kind of major changes in the culture across the board. And sometimes the church is the last piece of that world that they remember from 40 or 50 years ago. So I understand that. That's why I say painful. I don't want to close anything. And I know, and I appreciate the people here and their devotion to their church. That's a good thing.
Just, you had brought it up before we go to break here. Priests, what are trends there in terms of recruiting new priests, ordaining, so on and so forth?
Yeah. So at the moment, we actually have we had a real dip in COVID, which was experienced across the United States. At the moment, we have, I would say, a healthy number of applicants for the seminary for the coming year. That's very encouraging. That's the kind of first time since COVID that we've seen a rise. Now, still the numbers we're talking about, I think in some ways they're numbers that perhaps match the numbers of practicing Catholics in the state, but fewer than people would have known here years ago, obviously. The number of people attending Mass, by the way, is also up.
Is it?
Yeah, modestly, but I'm hearing that across the board as I go from parish to parish. The pastors are noticing it. I think some of that has to do with the anxiety of the state of the world, the economy, war, tales of horrors, you know.
People seeking comfort.
Yes. When people are anxious, they will tend to start thinking about God again. So that is an opportunity to try to, again, draw them close to the heart of Christ. But the point is there's something happening here which is actually hopeful and good. Catholic school enrollment is up.
Well, Bishop, why don't we, I do have to take a break. Why don't we explore that on the other half of the break? And when we come back, finding faith in a time of turmoil. Our guest is Bishop Richard Henning. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Our guest this week is Bishop Richard Henning from the Roman Catholic Diocese of Providence. Bishop, between the violence in Ukraine and Gaza, the discord in society, mass shootings, we could go on and on. It can be hard for people to find hope. And there may be viewers today who maybe aren't religious, Catholic or otherwise, and say, how can there be a just and loving God just watching over all of this evil right now in the world? What do you say to them?
I think that, the evil in the world fundamentally is the result of human sin, our failures, our misuse of authority, our desires run amok. In fact, God is the one who inspires the people of goodwill, who seek peace, who seek reconciliation, who seek understanding. I think the place to look for hope here actually is not in the heavens, but in the depths of the human heart. If you look around the world, even right now, most of the people listening to this, even as they look at the news and say, oh, I can't believe what's happening, these are people that love their families, that work hard, that I'm sure are honest in their dealings with others, who respect their neighbors, right? That's what this is really all about, is starting there. The world will always be full of people that have other intentions and are going to use violence, coercion, selfishness for their own purposes. In a very real sense, this is the work of the devil. But I think we find hope in the most simple truth of human solidarity and compassion. And I think that's what Christmas is about, right? So it's curious that when God wants to send us a message, he doesn't do it with armies. He doesn't do it with, great signs. He does it with the birth of his son, of a helpless, vulnerable infant in the most, the greatest poverty, the most difficult circumstances. That's when God's glory shines into the world. And that is reminding us really of where that true joy is found, and meaning and really hope. So I think wherever people find themselves, wherever their heart is right now, the place to go is really back here. And, be good to your neighbor. Don't just think about yourself. Love your family. Find good friends. These are the building blocks of a more just society, and one that is more in accord with God's will. Let's
zoom back into your into the Providence Diocese here. And I just want to talk briefly about your predecessor, Bishop Thomas Tobin. And it's no secret he could be a polarizing figure, I think, to put it mildly, particularly on social and cultural issues. I'm sure you are not going to criticize a brother bishop, but are you looking to lower the temperature at all in terms of the diocese's public face?
So I think, Bishop Tobin and I don't have differences of substance, but there are differences of style. We have different personalities. I have a different approach in terms of how I engage. I think the culture around us is changing sometimes faster than we know what to do with, and that's true for me too. Bishop Tobin's legacy has been really fascinating to me. I didn't know him before coming to Rhode Island. I'm very grateful for the many ways he has offered his guidance to me, including sharing with me some of his challenges that he had in this regard, and offering me counsel. So in some sense he's
Well,
guided.
I gotta ask, I'm sorry, I have to ask you, did he express regret in some of his public-facing dealings, particularly in social media?
He certainly joked about Twitter not being his best environment.
Do you have a Twitter account?
I do not.
Okay.
And he has encouraged me in that. So, I think that one of the things I really admire about him, though, is that Bishop Tobin's instincts are deeply compassionate. If you look at his legacy here in the diocese, we have a remarkably large social ministry footprint, and not just out there in centers, but in the chancery. This is a little bit unusual. I don't know if people really are aware of this element of Bishop Tobin, is his very deep care for people when they find themselves in trouble economically or in their family life. The whole Keep the Heat On program that he inspired and led and is still going strong. But there are people coming through our front door every single day in search of assistance with food, with financial help, with bills, with immigration help, legal assistance. It's a very well-developed social footprint. Our Emmanuel House now just began to welcome women as well. We have
32 beds, right?
Right, we have men's shelter, women's shelter. We're working on other projects. Bishop Tobin is a man of deep compassion. He never wore it on his sleeve. He never trumpeted it to the world, but he got it done. And I know that a lot of the criticisms of him focused on now changes in society and social, social ideas. But I think it needs to be acknowledged that this was a man of quiet but really deep compassion and care for those in need.
Yeah, but some of that was his own doing, of course, right? I mean, he broadcast out, almost literally using Twitter, some of those things that would cause tensions, to lack of a better word. But we don't have to dwell on that much more. I do want to, with our 4 minutes left or so, you brought up Catholic schools in the first half. I recall enrollment at Catholic schools saw an increase during the height of the pandemic. Some parents who could pulled their kids out of public school. What does enrollment look like now?
So we've been steadily seeing about a 3% rise across the board annually since the pandemic. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is I think our Catholic schools across the country, they navigated the pandemic well, as best you could, I suppose. We did not lose ground in our teaching. Our students' test results have not plummeted. They've remained steady and even gained. I think there's also, again, because of some of these social disagreements and differences in the culture, parents feel at a Catholic school they have more, they're heard, that they kind of have more of a seat at the table. And I think that's part of our commitment. So for Catholics, the parent is the first and best teacher of their child. And so it would be unthinkable for us to want to form their child without their participation. And it's the nature of Catholic school, because we need help, that parents are often the key fundraisers for the school. So those are good strengths. Now, it doesn't mean we don't have challenges. Rhode Island the number of children is shrinking in this state. So the modest gain is actually really, in effect, larger if you look at the fact that each year the number of children declines.
No doubt. I mean, you're looking at public schools that are seeing shrinking enrollments considerable.
And I think another thing that I've learned in our schools here, which is different from my prior diocese, we have a large percentage of non-Catholics in our schools.
Is that growing, do you know, or is that?
I don't know if it's growing, but I was surprised to learn some schools are 35, 40, 50, sometimes higher percentages of non-Catholics. So that's a different kind of Catholic school. I have to figure out what that means and how we do that. But I really want to look at the schools. I don't want to rest on my laurels. I want to begin looking for ways to strengthen them, even if we're doing well.
We have about a minute left here. You brought it up. Good opportunity to just mention the Keep the Heat On campaign. If people need help, what should they do?
Then go to the Donison website. I don't know the number off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
I'll put it in the Newsmakers page on WPRI.com.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
They just call and it gets the process started, and we do our best. Someone will come see them and help them out. Yeah.
Final question for you here. Unfortunately, Bishop Tobin was a rabid Steelers fan. How about you?
I'm not a Steelers fan.
What fan are you?
So I'm not yet a Patriots fan or a Red Sox fan. I come from the New York market, so Boston is a bit strange for me. I'm still getting used to it. I grew up a Mets fan, and honestly, I'm more college football than NFL, so get Florida Gators.
Bishop Richard Henning, thanks so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Tim. It's good to be with you.
Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holiday. We'll see you in the new year.